Okay, welcome back to Welsh Athletics Coaching Insights during the Stay Involved series for the lockdown. Tonight I am joined by Lawrence Moore, who is a sprints coach here in Wales. He's coached his own daughter, Mica Moore, who is a Commonwealth Games finalist back in 2014. She's also a Winter Olympian in the bobsleigh. He's coached Emma Wiltshire to multiple transplant world championships. Iori Moore, who was a Welsh 200-metre champion, and he's also been the speed coach for Curtis Matthews, a Welsh international decathlete who was part of the Commonwealth Games as well. So a checkered career all over the last sort of probably 5 to 10 years now. If you've been to an athletics track or competition anywhere in Wales, you'll have definitely seen Lawrence's face. So thank you very much for joining us tonight, Lawrence.
It's a pleasure, Matt.
Brilliant. And yeah, I'm Matt Elias. I am the lead for sprints, hurdles and relays here for Welsh Athletics. So we're going to learn a little bit more about Lawrence, get some insights into his coaching journey, some of his experiences, good, the bad and the ugly maybe, and then also a bit of a catch up within the lockdown. And yeah, to start us off, Lawrence, how are you doing? How are you finding sort of this lockdown period, and are you coping okay?
Yeah. Well, as you know, we've had a few chats about this, and from a coaching perspective, it's there's no doubt it's very challenging. You have to be innovative and as flexible as possible. And as we've discussed, we've employed the use of all sorts of IT equipment and methods that were certainly an old chap like me has struggled with in the past, but I've accelerated my development around it. But just tried to stay in touch with the athletes. We've toyed around with different ideas around the programming and whether to go back into winter training or stay with as close to what we thought would be, with an anticipation that there may be some competitiveness towards the end of the summer. So I think it's just having to be adaptable and flexible.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think, as you said, we've had a few discussions around this, so I wholeheartedly agree. Now, we'll probably get into some of the detail around what you've been doing in a short while, but I want to take it back a little bit. And I just want to kind of ask you what brought you to athletics and got you into coaching to start with?
Well, clearly, as you might have noticed, I'm not an athlete. And that wasn't my background. That was, I came from a rugby background, but our daughter Mica became involved in her early teens, and Mum and I used to take her to the track like thousands or hundreds of thousands of parents have done over the years. And actually, what happened was my wife Lolita got the sort of athletics bug. She'd been an athlete when she was younger and returned to it, and started taking part in masters athletics. And she didn't have a coach, and she asked me if I would do some work with her. And I think we've talked about this before. I think it was a really good grounding for me. Many athletics coaches come through the system working with sort of development, age group athletes, and I went from the different end of the spectrum, but I think it was a really good grounding for me, because with masters athletes you have to be quite creative, in terms of being understanding of what they're capable of, and obviously most of them masters athletes are working as well, so you have to work around that sort of working schedule and be creative with the programming, and that gave me a really good grounding. And then Lolita did relatively well, and Mica reached a point in her development after working with some great coaches, including people like Pete Lane and Dave Lease and people like that, she found herself without a coach, and she just turned around to me and she said, "Well, you've been doing it with Mum and Dad, so you're going to have to do it for me." So and that was the beginning of my journey with Mica, and eventually to some of the other athletes that you've mentioned there.
Yeah, I mean, it's been very much a family orientated thing for yourself with the coaching and the athletics. It's always the more together here and there is what you see, but it is great to see. And as you say, it's really nice to hear that kind of slightly different introduction to coaching, as you see a lot of the parents becoming involved coaching the youngsters, but here the creativity of coaching a masters athlete and learning on your feet, so to speak, is a nice different way of going about things. I mean, on that note, how is the relationship as a father and as a coach, as you've developed with Mica over the years?
Yeah. I mean, anybody who coaches their son or daughter, or anybody in their family, will understand it has its challenges. And Mica and I have certainly gone through some challenging times, but I think on the whole we both realized that clearly we wanted the best for her as an athlete, and also that one of the things that we really did set out at the very beginning was the principle that at the track, okay, yeah, I'm still a dad, obviously, and she's going to have her moments where she needs an arm around her shoulder, but essentially I'm her coach at the track. But at home, I'm a dad, and we tried. It's not always easy, but we tried not to talk too much track conversation when we were at home. Just let when she was younger, obviously, just let her be a little girl. And I mean, now she doesn't live with us anymore, so that doesn't arise so much. But yeah, I think it's important to set some guidelines, set some principles around that sort of interaction. But yeah, I think we've done okay, and we're at the moment we're in a really good place. So gosh, she still has her moments. And whether an athlete is your son or daughter, or whether they're an athlete that like you coach, often if they're not doing well, they look to their coach to help them. Quite rightly, absolutely.
Yeah.
So
As we often see, athletes always looking for someone else to put it onto. But
yes,
I think one of the things that kind of resonates with me around that is it's sort of having those boundaries to start with, as to say, right now we are that coach athlete relationship, and then we're away from the track, it's that father daughter relationship. And watching you guys, it seems to have worked really well. And I think a lot of coaches can kind of take something away from that about having good relationships and creating those boundaries for how you interact with your athletes in the appropriate environment. And as I said, it's always been a positive thing to see you and Mica like that. I've seen her at her best when she's had some great performances, and I've also seen her when she's struggled a little bit, and you've always been there to support her as a coach and a father. So yeah, it is great to see that. And as coaches, we all want the best for the athletes we work with. And it only goes to show that, as I say, with that. And it's not just Mica that you coach now. Obviously, the good work that you've done, you've attracted some other athletes in, and you've had not just family members, but other people, and they've had success. How have you found coaching some of those other athletes, and then also the challenges of maybe working with someone like a transplant athlete, with Emma? Were there different challenges you faced there?
yeah, definitely. I think, just to finish on the point around working with family members as well, it clearly one of the things that you can't do is become that I hate doing this, but that pushy parent that people have in their minds, and I don't think us as a family group have ever done that. And we very much involved mum and other members of the family as a support group. And you alluded to it earlier on, when we're at the track, we're very much a family group. And if Mica needed time to get away from me, then mum was there, and she could go and talk to mum about how she was feeling and that sort of thing. So I think it's important as a family, if you're going to do this, that you all commit to it as a family. You commit to the principles that I talked about earlier on. So, but yeah, moving on and working with other members within the group. I mean, those of you will know, obviously Yori is my nephew, and I've worked with him, and as have you, Matt, and that poses different challenges. I've worked with Curtis, as many people will know. Curtis and Mica are boyfriend and girlfriend, so that also poses its challenges. And I I don't like to make my life easy for myself, do I? But
No, I don't think you do. I think you love a challenge.
well, I've got to say, I'm saying that very much tongue in cheek. Everybody that I work with, I treat it as a privilege, because all of these young athletes are incredibly dedicated and accountable, and they're just a joy to work with. But to go on to working with transplant athletes, and of course worked with Emma for a few years, but then a young lad called Lewis Evans came and joined our group as well. So and Lewis is a transplant athlete and also a multiple world champion. So I think you'll see a sort of a theme running through my coaching career, is that need, in fact, to be flexible and adaptable. And I've experienced that starting off with Mica's mum, with Lolita, when she was a masters athlete, working with Mica when she transferred into bobsleigh, and that I'm sure we'll talk about that later. But also working with Kurt was a great opportunity, because being a multi-eventer, me as a speed coach and trying to integrate into his program, was a real challenge. And then of course sorry, I can hear the dogs barking in the background. It's put me off
That's all right.
off my train of
I've got a
thought.
cat down here too, as well.
Yeah. Then working with transplant athletes, who are a particular inspiration to me. Emma and Lewis have been quite extraordinary, really, and working with them through their journey into becoming transplant athletes. And you'll be aware of Emma's story, and it's been inspiring. Made me feel very humble. But from a coach's point of view, yes, we've had to make adaptations and always be aware of the limitations that they may have. But from an athlete's point of view, from their point of view, they've always said to me, "Coach, just treat me as an athlete, please. I just want to be an athlete." And so from a principle, from that perspective, that's where we start. But clearly, we have to take advice from the medical support that they get as well.
Yeah, it's great to hear that. And so I think one of the things that we've spoken about before, and what I pick up from that, is just around the flexibility that I know you're very strong in your principles within your coaching and kind of what you believe, but then it's having that flexibility and adaptability to put that toward the athlete that you're working with, and making sure that their health and well-being is always the utmost for everything you do. So I think that creativity and flexibility is definitely something I've seen in the work that you do. I mean, on some of those things, then you've had very mixed experiences. Mica had some very good progress through the juniors. She was part of the European Junior Championships, and then she went on to the Commonwealth Games in 2014 with Wales as a 4x1 team, where they broke the Welsh 4x1 record not once but twice, in the heats and then again in making the final. How were those experiences for yourself, first and foremost, as a parent?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's very difficult to put into words, Matt. If I'm honest, quite an extraordinary occasion, and it's funny. It's the one time we've spoken many times at competitions, and you like other people have offered to film races for me, whilst to allow me to watch. And I always, what I always say to you is, I can't. The one thing that keeps me from going over the top as a parent is to just keep filming, so I can maintain some sort of calmness.
That's where we're polar opposites. Because I can't film the race day.
That's right. Yes, exactly. And but those 2 nights in Glasgow, I let myself indulge myself and let myself just watch and enjoy the occasion. And they were, as a parent, they were an incredible occasion. As a coach, extraordinary opportunity, and I will always thank Welsh Athletics for the opportunity that they furnished me and other coaches with to attend the sort of the warm weather preparation training camp in Portugal, and to be part of that and see, Dave, who was the relay coach at the time, working with the athletes, and you were part of that process as well. Being so close to that process in an international event like that was incredible for me as a coach, and to see other athletes, at the peak of their career preparing, and the way that they prepared, and the meticulousness of easy for me to say, of what of what they put into it has really helped both Mica and myself in terms of our development and what is really needed to put an athlete in that sort of elite level. Yeah, so it was an incredible journey, an amazing event for all of us as a family.
No, it's great. Yeah, as I said, it was a great experience for everyone involved. All of the girls up there were absolutely fantastic, and Dave Lease, in terms of leading that program, myself supporting him, and having all of the personal coaches and you guys around, it was such a good unit to work with. And then to see the girls, break the Rouse record, even though me and Scott Simpson were in the catacombs watching it on the video to make sure we didn't get disqualified, which we didn't, and made it through.
Thank God you were, yeah.
Yeah. It was a great experience for all involved. But I think one of the things that I'll pick up on as well, Sid, you noticed that kind of attention to detail of the high level performance through your personal development as a coach. Have there been any kind of things that stand out that you've been involved with, or that you've taken on yourself, that kind of developed you and your kind of philosophy into your coaching?
Most definitely, Matt. And from very early on, I couldn't afford the luxury of not seeking out advice, because, as we've discussed, I've not come from an athletics background. I had no heritage, very little understanding. I mean, the only thing that I had in my favour was I'd studied sports science at Cardiff Met. So, I sought out people who I thought, I respected, and respected their principles around their training. One of the guys that we've talked about many times in my early development was a guy called Mike Elias, who was the relay coach for the GB Juniors, and he was very generous with his time with me. And but ever since then, I know this is a Welsh athletics sort of interview, but Welsh athletics have always supported me from my very early beginnings, very humble beginnings, and I have enjoyed the support in terms of attending different speed development days run by Welsh Athletics. I've enjoyed the opportunity to go to different forums of speed development, run by England Athletics, Great Britain Athletics, but always with the support of Welsh Athletics. And I think it probably culminated in the ultimate, where I was fortunate to attend the Altis camp in Phoenix in Arizona for about 10 days. And again, talking about taking yourself to the next level and seeing, Olympic athletes and coaches who had been multiple Olympic athlete gold medal coaching coaches, was incredible. The likes, obviously, of Dan Pfaff and the other guys who coached there, Stu and the rest of the guys. So that was quite a moment for me. A little bittersweet, because Mica was fortunate enough to go there as well as part of a Welsh Athletics development opportunity, and she did incredibly well while she was out there, but picked up some sort of virus, and she had a really torrid time on returning from there. That's just one of those things, but it led to something else. So,
well, yeah, I mean, that kind of leads us on nicely. As I say, I think some of those experiences as a coach, to get out and see different environments, I think is one of the things I believe in most as a coach. Is it's having your philosophy and what you believe in, but then it's exposing yourself to as many sort of other environments as possible, and go and see what other coaches do in their environments, and then see how then you can adapt that back to the environment you work with. Because yeah, as you alluded to, you're in Altis for a week, 10 days, where the sun is shining in Phoenix, it's 90 degrees every single day. They're all full-time athletes, they're all full-time coaches working at that pure elite end of the sport. And then it's how we can mold some of the stuff that they do and bring that into our world, where you're working with part-time athletes, students, all sorts of things. You're jostling for space on the track. Who knows what you're dealing with? So it's about creating those environments, and then what we can learn from them. And then
I think, sorry, Matt, if I could just add to that, I think, you alluded to that there, and I fell hook, line, and sinker into that trap, really, where I came back, and one of the other things, of course, which I think we've talked about, is that when you're out there, all you're seeing is a snapshot of their training, really. It's a week or 10 days of what they're doing at a particular time, and I don't think, as a coach, and I put my hands up, I really adapted what I learned out there very well. I tried to transplant a lot of it into my sort of training program without thinking about all of those, variables that you talked about there. And it was a harsh lesson to learn.
It's great to hear you talk about that, though, because one of the big things I think with coaches sometimes is we're not willing to admit our mistakes. And I think the best coaches in the world are the ones that are willing to look at themselves and realize when they've made a mistake, and then do something to try and change it. So it's good to hear your honesty around that. We've all done it. We've all been to a coaching seminar or a conference, or I say something like that, come back and gone, oh, that's a brilliant idea, and throw it straight into your program, and it doesn't work how you want it to. So I think that's always one of my biggest takeaways now from any time I go to a conference. I always try and reflect over the next 3 weeks as to exactly the learning that I've had, and how then I can adapt that to my own environment.
Completely.
No, it is good to hear that. We'll move on to some other things now. And then obviously, I said at the start around Mica, she kind of took a little bit of a leave from athletics for a while, and had a little soiree into another sport, which ended up being quite successful, making the Pyeongchang Olympic Games. How was that kind of experience for you? And then also, how was the transition from track athlete to a bobsleigh athlete? Were there any changes you had to make, and just some of the experiences you had, really?
Yes. I mean, again, talk about setting challenges for myself, or, well, I should say Mica setting challenges for me. Just anecdotally, I'll talk about how she did it, but for Christmas in the first year she got involved, she found a book on Amazon, how to coach a brake woman. So she just gave me that and said, right, Dad, over to you. And but yes, I mean, I mentioned she got a virus after Altis, which really affected her, and she had a really difficult year after coming back from Altis, after experiencing the highs of the Commonwealth Games in Glasgow. And she just really struggled, and she couldn't find any form at all. And one of her her friends who was in the men's under 20s European relay team in Estonia was part of the bobsleigh program at the time, and he said, why don't you just come and try out? And she went on one of these talent ID days, and it turned out that it looked like she was going to be pretty good. So we made the decision to give it a go, and if we decided, and I would recommend this to anybody who's thinking about transitioning from any sport to another. If you're going to do it, then do it. Don't go half-hearted at it. Commit to it. Set out your principles, set out your plan. What are we going to do? What do we want to achieve from it? And that's what we did. We sat down, and Mica sort of established herself as the #1 brake woman in the team, and they went on to become junior world champions, her and Misha, her pilot, and as you say, finished the 8th, the highest women's bobsleigh team has ever finished in Pyeongchang Olympics. An amazing journey. But as a dad, obviously, and being there with Mum and Curtis out there as well, which one or two of you might have seen on the TV. Embarrassing dad moment for Mica, but from the coach's perspective, yeah, it did set out some challenges. Clearly, there's a lot of crossover between sprinting and being a brake woman, but there's some very different technical aspects to the way that you push, although it's still an acceleration. So we had to learn how to adapt to that, and Ed at the track made us a great little trolley that Mica could practice with weights on it. So big thanks to Ed. Shout out to him, and really doing what I've always done throughout my coaching career was to collaborate with people, so from various different countries actually. And Mica got a good relationship with a guy who was a Swiss coach, and we collaborated a bit around Mica's development, and the guys at British Bobsleigh and Skeleton, who were very sort of magnanimous in allowing Mica to carry on working with me as well, to maintain my working relationship with her, to keep we trust each other very much, and so but it did. Not least of which the challenges around the technical aspects of it, but also when people look at, you'll know this, Matt, from being an elite athlete yourself, traveling around the world. It always sounds great, and people assume that you've got the best of facilities and everything, but you don't. And Mica ended up training in car parks and multi-story car parks, and anywhere she could find a flat, relatively snow-free area of ground to do a training in. But sticking to some core principles around speed development, acceleration development, and applying force and strength and conditioning, but adapting them to some slightly different technical aspects of pushing a very, very heavy sled. Even though it's on ice, it's still heavy.
I can imagine. As you say, the principles of acceleration still kind of underpin it, but as you said, you've got to push a very, very heavy sled to start with as well. So I can imagine it's adapting those and slight changes to the S&C program, I'm guessing. Did she have to put on any weight, or did the Bob coaches want her to put on weight for that? Or is it something we should talk about?
Yes. And if Mica's watching this, it was a little bit of a bone of contention, because Mica did still have track and field aspirations, and she wanted to achieve as much as she could through the bobsleigh program. But while she was in the bobsleigh program, there are clearly opportunities during the summer for her to compete in track and field. So she wanted to maintain some track and field capability as well. So yes, there was an expectation that she would put on weight, but we took a slightly different perspective around it. And Mica wanted to maintain her speed, not just for track and field, but we felt that by applying force for as long as possible, so staying fast for as long as possible, she could gain hundredths of seconds by being able to do that rather than putting weight on. Yeah. Even if she put some weight on, she would never have been as big as some of the brake women that come from the traditional bobsleigh countries like Germany and America and Canada and everything. So we felt that she would lose so much speed by putting weight on that it would negate the ability for her to stay on the back of the sled and apply the force for as long as possible and maintain the speed through the sled. So it seemed to work okay. Yeah, they did pretty well. But she didn't quite achieve the weight gain that was expected of her.
But as you said, there was good thought process and rationale behind what you guys were thinking to maximize her performance. And potentially you don't know whether that may have had a negative impact if she'd put on too much weight, as you say, and then with the aspirations of potentially coming back to track and field during the summer, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, listening to you there as well, it's almost like you've teed up this interview for me. It's been fantastic. As you say, in lots of car park training and finding just flat ground. Obviously, we're in a lockdown situation here in Wales at the moment where the tracks are closed. So there are a lot of concrete workouts, hill workouts or grass workouts. How are you finding that? And do you think maybe some of the things you learned from the Bob has actually helped you be able to program and manage Mica through this time?
Yeah, I think so. I think so, Matt. You know, the main principle that I have as a coach is to do no harm, as we've talked about earlier on in the interview. And I think you need to, during these times, you need to be extra aware of that, because these guys have trained on, have been very fortunate to train on some lovely surfaces, some lovelier than others, but training on grass and training on concrete and that sort of thing can have a real impact on the body. So yeah, there's some sort of adaptation around the training program. We've not strayed too far away from what we would normally do around this time of the year, but as we've talked about in the last couple of weeks, I think not only has it tested my coaching capabilities, but I've had to encourage the athletes to take a much greater accountability for what they do. And that and this is not criticism of the athletes whatsoever, that can be quite a mindset change for them. It's really having to think and be aware of their surroundings first and foremost, where they're training, if they're training out. And Lewis, the transplant athlete, he's down in West Wales at the moment, and running on grass. And we've had conversations around being very super careful about running on the grass, because you don't want to turn your ankle over. Running on concrete for all of the guys is tough. It's tough on the shins, it's tough on the ankles and the knees. Mica herself was very fortunate. She sort of had the foresight to invest in a curved running machine. So I'm not sure her neighbours are too happy about it, because she's got it in her living room. But she managed to get it before the lockdown was enforced, and got it installed in her house. And I highly recommend them. Actually, I'm not sure I would recommend them for 3 months at a time, but I have seen a difference in how she's running, and I think they do, where appropriate, when you're using them appropriately, they can benefit, good mechanics.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's fantastic foresight from her to get that with this kind of looming over is brilliant. And as you said, I'm a fan of the curved treadmill as well, as you can do some good sort of extensive tempo type work on it, and you can actually hit some decent speed stuff with some good mechanics as well. So yeah, it's a pretty good piece of kit. I think one of the things that I'd like to just reiterate and say from what you've just said there, I have the same thing as you have in terms of safety. The whole thing of this lockdown, athletes want to train and they want to put the work in that they have been for the last couple of years, but in environments that aren't anywhere near as controllable as we would normally have them at a track, without interaction and the eyes on of the coach. As you said, they're having to be more accountable, they're having to take care of themselves. I've said the same as you to all of the athletes I work with, and I just want all of them to come out at the back end of this healthy, so that we can then start putting some real quality work back in, hopefully, if there is a season at the back end of this year. I'll just finish off. It's just been great to chat to you this evening. What advice would you have? What advice would you give, just the one or two lines to any kind of parents or people thinking about getting into coaching, or any new coaches who've just kind of signed up and done their assistant coach or their coaching qualification?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, Matt.
Definitely throwing you on the spot there.
My instinctive answer to the first part of your question around parents or members of family wanting to get involved is absolutely do it. Genuinely just do it, because you just don't know where it's going to go. And this sport, I absolutely love being involved in it. It's an incredible sport to be involved with. These young people who we have great fortune to work with are incredible young people. So yes, I would say absolutely do it. I think, as I said to you before, have a good understanding of why you want to do it. Make sure and be brutally honest with yourself. Understand why you want to be involved. If you're going to be involved, map it out. Think about what you're going to need, what support you're going to need. Think about the principles that you're going to apply to your coaching style and the technicalities of your coaching. What sort of process do you want to go through? And yeah, be open, honest, and accountable, and seek out advice as much as you can. I've been there, and this is a genuine statement now, and it might not apply to anybody else. If we're not proficient at something, and it happens to me at work, the fear of people scrutinizing what you do sometimes makes you a little bit blinkered, and you don't want to engage with people in case they think, oh my God, what is this guy talking about? Try to lose any of those sort of inhibitions. I've had to, because I needed to develop as quickly as I possibly could. And therefore, go to the people that you think are going to benefit you, but be open and honest with them. You have to be, and allow scrutiny of what you do so that you can improve. And you alluded to this earlier in the conversation. And the second part of your question about anybody who wants to get involved in coaching, absolutely, definitely do it. Rely on your governing bodies to help you do that. And I think we've got a pretty good system here in Wales. It's gone through a number of different changes in hierarchy over the time that I've been involved. Certainly, very definitely some consistency over the last 4 or 8 years when, good quality people have been involved. Reach out to your governing body for the support that you need to develop yourself. But more than that, just talk to people at the track and get anecdotal advice from people. And if you're a parent and you want to speak to me about it, come and speak to me. You might have noticed I like to talk a little bit, so I'm more than happy to share my experiences and my journeys. But anybody who wants to be involved in this amazing sport, do it.
Well, there's nothing else I can add to that. That was a great answer, and it really has been a pleasure chatting to you this evening, Lawrence. It's been great to listen to your journey as a coach and all the things you've learned. And yeah, I think your passion for the sport, your passion for coaching, your humility of working with these athletes just kind of comes through in everything you're saying. So thank you very much for being part of the Coaching Insights and Stay Involved series. And hopefully we'll do this very soon after a competition with a beer in a hand and not a glass of water.
Now you're talking my language, Matt.
Thanks a lot, Lawrence.
Cheers, Matt. Thank you very much.
Cheers.